information that we're losing moment to moment. How can we harvest this information to create a reality, an assisted experience? The internet is dead. The internet, the information of you, is the future. People will create an assisted reality, created on demand as you need it. There are no such thing as thought leaders. Serotonin is a thought leader. I'm aware.
Please join me in welcoming Chris Dancy to the stage.
How was lunch? Can we get a round of applause for lunch? Yeah, so last night I'm laying in bed and my phone's like vibrating and everyone's like, "You're on CNN." And I'm like, okay, I don't know. What do you want me to do? I'm in bed. There's not much I can do about that. I can't find any place for this water, and I have enough electronics on that I would probably kill myself if I... Hi! Literally, I'm covered in electronics. Back before the TSA rules, they used to say, turn everything off. I'm like, I can't function. I like to make stuff really accessible, and it's not very accessible here because you can't see it, because the bottom of the screen's cut off. But I guess if you want this presentation, you can text RootsTech to 50500 if you want to write that down or remember, or it's online. I created this for RootsTech, but it's RootsTech to 50500, 5500. If you're a Twitter person, I'm at ServiceSphere or at Chris Dancy. I'll talk about identity in a moment. I really wanted to create something special this year when I was thinking last year about personal information and identity. And I wanted to do something unique to kind of tell my story because I'd been told so many ways. So I really started looking into other cultures' ideas of death, which kind of led me to this concept of immortality, which is kind of touchy. Because what do you mean by immortality? Like, you know, are you a vampire, or do you have a soul that's going on and living? You know, what is it? Immortality is a really touchy issue. So I thought I'd kind of break it down into some really simple sections for us. So starting off with just a quick look at the Egyptian Book of the Dead and how that culture, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, through different means, started capturing rites and rituals to help the dead pass through and memorialize their lives and celebrate their lives and ultimately be immortal. But then talk a little bit about what it means to be immortal today, actually define that. Talk about identity, because you really can't talk about death and history and genealogy without knowing who you are. So much of what we do is constructed through the lens of someone else after you pass on. And then finally, something that's very dear to me, and that's, what do we do if they force us to work after we die? I really want to be done. But some of this doesn't seem possible anymore, so we're going to kind of jump into that. Last week, I was really excited to find out that Boston University did a study on the concept of immortality, and it found that most people are hardwired to believe in some fashion, whatever your belief system is, that you will carry on. Simultaneously, MIT came out with a service they're calling EterniMe, and we'll look at it at the end of the deck, you can start plugging certain data sources into, and you can talk to grandma or anybody who's been plugged in after they've died. And I've done this, and I'll talk a little bit about what it was like to talk to myself from a data standpoint in just a minute. But to get things going, we have to kind of get over this whole idea of being immortal, and is it something we want, and is it something we can control? My entire family, for the most part, has passed on. They're no longer with me. I have a brother who I'm estranged from, and I wish I knew him better, and I wish I knew my aunts and uncles, but they all are gone, and it'd be easier to say we were in a shipwreck, but it just randomly all left. But I memorialized them, and I have my mom's nightgown and other little trinkets and things like that. So in some ways, I feel like my mom's with me. I feel like she's always looking through my eyes. It's this weird kind of energy and love that I have for all of them. But is there a way that I can actually get in touch with them? The Egyptians had something called the Book of the Dead. It was a guidebook. There are about 25,000 copies of the Egyptian Book of the Dead that are found today. So each person who was, while they were living, got a Book of the Dead. But you had to be really rich in the beginning. And the roots of the Book of the Dead were actually tied 1,000 years before the first Book of the Dead was created in something called the coffin text and the pyramid texts. So basically the inscriptions and pyramids and coffins. And then finally they said, hey, wait a minute, we could make a handy little magazine for people. And then that's how it really got started. So, thousands of years before we actually had a Book of the Dead, we had things that helped with the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead then became democratized, so everyday people could afford it. It wasn't just for kings and pharaohs and rich people. Within the Book of the Dead, there were about 186 different spells and rituals that actually helped you in the afterlife. Chapter 6 was dedicated to making sure you had slaves with you so you didn't have to work. Note what I said earlier. I'm just saying, none of this stuff's real new, and those of you who've lived a good life know that there's nothing new going on here. But you had it created by a priest, and the priest would do this for you. So in some way, the priest looked at your life and said, this is all the things you do, and I'm going to help you in your afterlife so that you can manage it. And I thought, well, this is very much like what we do today online, and every time we touch a piece of technology, or this one's listening to me all the time, and I don't let people see it because then they freak out. And this one lets me take pictures and talk to it, and I talk to it right now if I want, but then it looks creepy that I'm talking to myself. But more than that, the book of the Dead actually was this process. So mummies were created so that your body could actually enjoy, because they believed the body then would rise again and the soul would come back in the body. Ironically, all the organs were moved out of the body except for the heart, and the heart actually was left in. But they didn't think you needed the brain in the afterlife, and if you've ever used a mobile phone, you know that most people don't need a brain to do that. Speaking of that, I was on the way here, and this taxi driver was on his phone using Facebook in one hand and then talking in a CB microphone in the other, and I thought to myself, this is a driverless car. He's not even here. I don't know why we're Google, hurry up. I'd rather him not be behind the wheel, but sorry, I felt like I'd become my parents, like, what are you doing? I didn't, don't make him mad, Put the seatbelt on before you yell at him, Sorry, I digress. One of the most famous books of the dead was the Scroll of Ani, and it was found in about 1250 BC, lives in England right now, so probably Andrew has a copy of it, and it's 65 pages and 130 different spells, but it's the most complex illustration we have of the Book of the Dead. But ultimately, the Book of the Dead was for the living. You had it created when you were alive based on your lifestyle and how you lived and your identity. And I think that's really important to think about as we move into how I look at death and immortality and ancestry. Today, death is very much dualistic, whether we want to recognize it or not. There's an organic death that we experience, but still we have a lot of information online and in systems. Long before we had the internet, we had lots of transactional systems that kept bank records that were in mainframes, and those still lived on. We could print them out, right? So, there's always been this dualistic view of when you die, and we never really talked about who gets the records of your Safeway Club card after you pass away, right? I went to Safeway, and I said, anybody from Safeway here? Because I'd like to yell at you. I went to Safeway recently, and I said to them, can I have records of everything I bought last year? And they said, okay. So about a week later, I get a FedEx box with receipts. So I called them up and I said, I don't want the receipts. I want to know what I bought. And, well, you got that. I'm like, no, send it to me so I can look at it and run some reports and stuff. Oh, we can't do that. I said, I'd rather keep the 10 cents on toothpaste. Tell me what I'm buying when I'm buying it, right? And they wouldn't. And it just infuriates me because there's so much of this information that should I pass away that would be interesting or at least relevant to my life. So organically, it's very easy to die biologically. It is. It's really a breeze. It's your last breeze, but it's a breeze. There's about 3 billion people that'll die in your lifetime. So in a single lifetime, about 3.9 billion people die. 7,000 people will die during this presentation. Right? So by the time I got to the stage, 7,000 people would have died. There's all sorts of really good law about dying. You know, someone like Quincy, sorry if you're from the 70s, yeah, he's dead. You know, he's pronounced dead. There's laws around disposal and what you can do with bodies and asset distribution. Culturally, we have traditions and institutions, personal belief systems, and religions to help. So organically, biologically, it's okay. You can go. All right, but digitally, it's very, very weird, and we're going to look at why this is happening, I think, and why we need to really pay attention to this, because there's some profound implications. Right now, there's really two things that are happening. Biologically, death, the artifacts from that are things like blood, DNA, hair, other organic matter. Some people are into cryogenics. From an analog standpoint, as we heard earlier, you can have records, letters, deeds, photos, recordings, any types of possessions. But digitally, you can't hold any of those things. So in the past 30 years, most people who've been alive have used some form of technology or some form of transactional system. In that time frame, we really haven't paid much attention because we're just using them, we're not really thinking about it. But in that same way that I was left a scrapbook by my mother, it's one of the dearest things to me. It's full of like tree limbs and Band-Aids with blood on them and all sorts of things when I was a kid. There is no scrapbook for anyone who's going to come after me. There's just mountains of online information. And just like we have DNA to map biologically who you become, your digital footprint or your exhaust really helps decide who you are from an identity standpoint, especially for people who have never met you. But after you pass away and someone's looking for you, if they Google search you, is that what you want them to find? Right? Because your obituary won't be the top hit, right? It'll be some cat picture you posted from a party. We just need to be sensitive to this sort of thing. So digitally, it's really hard to die because you don't. About 40 million people have died on Facebook since Facebook started. The terms of service, if you do die on Facebook, are just horrifically difficult to deal with. Getting a hold of somebody's account who's passed away, they've got a form for it, but they make it really difficult. You can either deactivate it. There's no IP around anything you do online. So whether it's Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or the records from your car, how you drove, all of that's owned by other people. So you don't have access to that any information. And it's not like we're writing down nice records like our relatives. Culturally, it's even stranger how we treat people who've passed away online. People still have relationships with people online once they've passed away. They still tag them in pictures. When my grandmother and my mother died, I couldn't tag them in pictures after they were dead. But today, as friends of mine find pictures of me and my family and they tag my mother, it's like, oh, wow, oh, wait, my mom's dead, right? So there's this weird, we've never had this ability to bring back the dead constantly throughout the day as your friends find people. I didn't have a system like the one that was described earlier. So digital death today is really defined by these areas: multimedia, the things you watch and participate in, any type of social behavior, any type of crowdsourced data. There are over 61 systems that measure you in a grocery store. You thought you were buying bread. Quantified self, so people who wear sensors to kind of measure their biological health. Surveillance, that's a big topic in the news today. I mean, in some ways, I think we should be thankful for the NSA. They're doing good documentation. Just saying they need an API, but maybe. Okay. That was for you guys. And then, of course, you have the Internet of Things. So you put anything in your house with an IP address in it, then it's suddenly you have a relationship with it. So if I leave home, my lights know to turn off because I left. Well, if my lights know more about me than my dog, we've got interesting issues about to happen. So what does it mean to really die today? Digitally, and we're going to talk a little bit about me and my story, but I really wanted this presentation to kind of make you aware of what's happening around us. Well, there are some interesting things that happen in death today. So first, there are dead people you can follow online. Like after someone dies, people keep their accounts going and keep posting as them or artifacts from their lives or something. So there's the top 10 dead people you can follow on Twitter. There's something called Tweety where you can tweet at dead people and maybe they'll answer you through an algorithm. I mean, when I was a teenager, we actually had a Ouija board, and today you're tweeting at dead people, maybe getting a answer is yes, I don't. I know. I mean, can you get over this? And then I grew up in the 80s, and to me, before it was scandalous, I was a big Michael Jackson fan. I was a kid, he was cool. He had a glove and wore weird socks. It was fun. But, when he died, it was a big deal for me. I remember my mom pulling off the road and when she heard on the radio that Elvis Presley died, and she was crying, and I couldn't understand what was wrong with my mother. I'm like, Mom, he's Elvis Presley, he's kind of fat, And, I didn't get it, right? But then when Michael Jackson died, I felt like part of my childhood had been ripped out of me. And I went to Las Vegas a few months ago, and I went to the Cirque du Soleil show. Michael Jackson won. And at the end of the show, I can't walk over there because there's something about camera angles and stuff. But at the end of the show, they create a hologram in an outfit he's never worn, and he sings a song he never sang based on information and photographs of his voice, his clothing, and his behavior. And they reconstructed Michael Jackson back on stage for me. And, of course, I kind of lose my mind because there's Michael Jackson wearing something I've never seen him wear, singing a song I've never heard him sing, as if he's never passed away. It's disturbing. It's disturbing. Now, they're doing that for Michael Jackson in Las Vegas, but I don't think it's a far cry to say in 30 years for $15,000 you can do it for Auntie May. When you want to spin her up next to the toaster and talk to her, not a problem. All right? Nice dress today. I just got it, Okay. Gosh, I'm so sorry. I knew this would be a tough talk, but there's some really interesting things that are happening, and some of these are going to be sad, and I apologize, I had a line. This is a young lady by the name of Amanda Todd, and she actually posted a video of how sad she was from being bullied. And then she took her life right afterwards. And then this video is still there. Her family left it up, and people go to this video, and they leave her messages and memorialize her life in this way. And it's a real tribute to her life and the fact that her parents left it up. But it says a lot about, there's, a suicide note's one thing, a suicide video that people interact with is completely the other. No one interacts with suicide notes, right? You might lay flowers at the grave of John Lennon or any of these other kind of pop icons, but there's no interaction like there is now because of online. But then strange things happened after Amanda passed away because she had a really generic, I don't want to say generic name, but it was pretty common. People online started being told they were dead, and they started saying, no, I'm not dead, I'm still alive, that's another Amanda, right? So there's this very weird dualistic liquid identity that happens online if you do pass away and you are heavily connected like some young people are, where people might think, are you alive? It gets to be very, very difficult to understand what's identity, what's death, what's living, who are you? And all of these APIs and technologies people are talking about can play a really important role in that. I live in Colorado, and we had a really horrific shooting by a madman last year. And this young lady tweeted out while she was, waiting for the movie to start right before the horrific behavior of this individual happened. But to this day, that sits there, and people go and interact with her in that moment as a way to memorialize what happened in Aurora, Colorado. So she still has a relationship, even though organically she's passed on, and that event has passed, and now we just have those yearly kind of multimedia, let's talk about the anniversary, and let's not. But people still go there and deal with this. And then there's other just kind of, I just think, tragic stories. This is a copywriter 2 months ago who had been working for 30 hours straight. She tweeted out that she didn't think she could keep going, and they found her dead an hour later. So if we're putting our lives online, we're also putting our deaths online. And I think that's important to remember, because how people interact with that, and how we feel about that, and how we associate with that, that's new. We didn't have, 20 years ago, we didn't have options to deal with these types of things. When I visited my grandmother, we took a trip, went to her headstone, brought flowers. That was it. Had dinner with some local relatives. That was it. Right? We didn't have these things. I think a very powerful story, before I end on this section, is this young woman, also by the name of Amanda, who was fighting brain cancer. And no one really was following her at the time. She just had a few friends, and she didn't really tell a lot of people. But she started tweeting out what was happening to her. So she said, "I just resigned from my job. No point. I have 3 months to live. Right? It's wonderful. I'll get my pension money." She then tweeted, "I left my phone on the kitchen table. I went to Cuba, to Central America for 2 months. It was spectacular." So she just started living. Right? It's just like, I've got 2 months. I'm just going to live. Tonight, I got up the nerve to call my mom, who I haven't spoken to in 5 years. Don't spend too much time being angry at people. Forgive them, for life is entirely too short. Tomorrow, going to the hospital for the last time. Thank you for the good vibes. Be good to each other. And then someone from her family, let us know that she'd passed away. Now, I wasn't friends with her, but I think it takes tremendous social courage and bravery to share your life so openly, so digitally openly in front of people. But there are some interesting, awkward phenomena that are happening with young people. And I don't want to just say it's young people, because I actually did something like this, but I'm admitting it here first now. When my mom died, and I've talked to people, and they said it's not that unusual, but I didn't quite do this. So when my mom died, I actually took a picture. All right, just like I was at the funeral, we were alone. I wanted a picture. I don't know why. Maybe it's creepy, but I'm not ashamed. I said it. I did it. But what is kind of creepy to me are young people who go to funerals and do selfies, right? So there's them, and like, hey, it's me and Dad, But they don't have a relationship like we did, because their dad was online, so they're going to go home and still connect to him, right? So what does it mean if you have this kind of analog, digital, biological, organic, liquid identity version of death that you feel okay taking a selfie? I didn't take a selfie with my mother, right? That just kind of creeps me out. But I'm not going to judge it either, because it's something that happens. The great quote by someone that I found online: "Therefore, the deceased identity not only continues into virtual space, but it also can evolve and adapt as others continue to interact with the dead person's profile." Common theme we're seeing on as others continue to interact with it. So what is identity in 2014? What is identity in 2020? What is identity in 2025? I'm not going to go into historical identity. I'm not a genealogist. I'm a living genealogist. I mean, I'm capturing everything in real time. I don't mind being recreated next to the toaster. I'd love to talk to me, but I won't be here. My mom used to say, "You'd love to hear yourself speak," and I finally could say, "Yeah, you're right." But historically, identities were constructed by other people, by other institutions, by records, etc. Today, digitally, identities are constructed by everything we touch, or everything we come in relationship to, whether it's the social networks you're on, or genetic databases like 23andMe, that's the only one I'm a part of, or fitness activities, things like Fitbit. They're also based on the Internet of Things. So right now, there were about 2 billion objects that were connected to the internet in and around you in 2006. But in 6 years, there'll be 200 billion objects connected to the internet in and around you. And those things are watching you and helping you. And I think it's somewhat important to think about, if you have a relationship with those things, they have a story of you just like your family had a story of you. Digitally, they're building platforms. So this is a company called Giro Labs that allows you to hook up a bunch of your health sensors and then basically kind of have a single version of who you were from a health standpoint. I always tell people, everything you deal with digitally falls into one of four categories: a sensor, a device, a service, or an application. All of those things are connected and interconnected, so they have relationships with one another. As I mentioned earlier, there are really no good policies. Google probably has the best digital death policy out there. If you use any Google services, I encourage you to go. Make sure you look into the Google death policy. You can sign up for who can take over your assets online. But there are very few services. Wikipedia lists them. Very few email services, Facebook, a Dropbox, a couple business services. No one's really addressing digitally, and there's going to be a whole bunch of vendors in here. If you interact with their services, where's all that data, and how do you get to it? And then finally, there are some states that are dealing with afterlife digital rights bills. And there are some interesting services. So there's Death Switch, which basically, if you die and they find your obituary, they kill your accounts, right? So it's a nice little algorithm to do that. There's something kind of creepy called Lives On, where you can API into your Facebook and Twitter, and it will continue to post as you based on how you used to post. And then there's the tweet after, which basically scans the internet. Do I have laser? Laser. There's the tweet after, which basically scans the internet for obituaries and then scans for social media accounts and then shows you the last thing someone said in their obituary. So it's a live stream of last words. Yay! It's ridiculous. And then there's actually services. I don't know if this works. We'll try to play this.
Last words. We all hope we'll get a chance to say some, but not knowing when or where we're going to die makes it a bit tricky. Thankfully, with If I Die, it's a whole lot easier. If I Die is a unique Facebook app that allows you to leave a message that will only be published after you die. Simply install the app on Facebook, leave your message, and choose trustees that will be in charge of reporting your death. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, I don't remember scheduling an appointment with death anytime soon. And you're right, but so is death, right around the corner. So don't wait until it's too late. Leave your message today. It can be a bid farewell, a favorite joke, a long-kept secret, an old score you wanted to settle, or even some valuable advice. If I die, what will you leave behind?
You know, kids today have the coolest tools. I had Legos and maybe some cards. I couldn't leave a "I hate you, Mrs. Williams" message on my death, so... And there are events completely dedicated to digital death. I wouldn't really say our event is really about that, but there are people who are really focusing on this. Along the lines of identity, I think it's really important to also look at consciousness. There's some amazing research coming out in connected consciousness. So there's something called the Collective Consciousness Project, and basically it's a Kickstarter program that's actually aligning consciousness by using a random number generator. And it's amazing how much you can influence things around you with just thinking about them. And I think that's really going to be important as we look at our relationship to those things. For me, most of my research I've done on digital death has come from these two books. So if you're a book person, I'll tell you right now, they're not inexpensive, but they're not expensive. These are really two great books to think about digitally what it means to be alive and dead. But I was asked to be here to talk a little bit about me. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Is that going to work? Yeah, it is. So I'm alive. Hold on. Yeah, I am. I actually have sensors for this sort of stuff. Let's check to make sure I'm here. Yeah, hold on. We can do this. I should have put this up on the screen. You guys would have loved this. Okay. Yep. Sure enough, I'm standing upright. It tells me whether I'm bending over or standing. There's my heart rate. I'm still okay. There's my sleep and my motion. Here's my drive. Oh, there's my bed. I have something that I put the mattress. The mattress tells me how I sleep every night. And there's my drive-in. So I'm fully functioning. That was probably pretty creepy, wasn't it? Told you it was cool. So these are all the things that I wear and I have around my house. So I have things that I have all over my body. I have 11 sensors on my body right now. I have genetic information. I have microbiome information that I use. I also record everything, so I have cameras on me, smartwatches, wearables, devices, everything giving me haptic feedback, which is really nice, because if you think about it, if you're doing GPS and you want to like look at your phone, it can get confusing, right? Because you're like, where am I going, right? But with something like haptic shoes, they just vibrate left or right or slow down or speed up. So your shoes just tell you where to go. I mean, maybe too soon. But I'll be wearing them next to the toaster. And then my house and my dogs have sensors. And my house is wired so that if the dogs are too complacent, the lights blink, noise, rock, you know, I'm like, I'll teach you rock. That's not a shock collar, that's a get off the couch collar, right? And then in my house, my lights are all Wi-Fi, my temperature is Wi-Fi, my music, my bedding, everything in my house is wired. So I have a really interesting life, because if I have an event coming up, a meeting with someone really stressful or something, my house actually changes. So sometimes when people visit my house, they'll say, did the lights slightly change in the temperature? I'm like, yeah. Why? I have a meeting in an hour. For what? I precondition myself. Why? Because I don't like the person I'm meeting with. Oh, right? So to me, I call it existence as a platform, but life should like help you be you, right? And if you don't know really who you are, and some people go, well, you just think about it. If you're stressed out, just calm down. I don't have time to take a moment to be calm. There are things to be done. I live in that generation where like we don't have real work anymore, so we have to be busy, you know. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. Those people in here over 50. You remember when we did work? You know, I'm 45. I remember when we did work, and it wasn't just like, oh, let's have a meeting and talk about something, you know. So I basically mapped my entire life through 10 areas of my life: health, entertainment, environment, social media, knowledge work is what I get paid for, travel, opinion, content creation, spirituality, and money. And I took as many systems as I could. I do about 5 systems a week now. I have over 700 systems monitoring me at any given point. And I feed that information into a Google Calendar. So my Google Calendar looks like a super busy day, but it's thousands of systems recording, which is really interesting, because when you can Google your life, it's amazing. Like, you know, when's the last time I heard this song? I can tell you. When's the last time I heard this song and I was happy? I can tell you. When's the last time I heard this song and I had toast and I was happy and it rained? I can tell you. Right? I'm still online, okay. So, so I thought, well, this is good. I've been doing this for 4 years, and I just kind of got recognized last year for this. But this is good, but I said, you know, this is not really helping me be a better human. This is just like really vanity, like on a crazy level. So I thought, I need to understand what I was doing. So basically, I tied all of those systems to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so I could actually create digital goals, right? How do I learn to be a better person? How do I learn to be more kind? How can I learn to eat healthier? I don't want to exercise every day. I don't want to not watch some of my TV shows. So basically, I took the areas I really focus on, which are activity, sleep patterns, movement, and environment, lighting, ambient sound. For example, if I'm at my desk and I'm in a meeting with someone and my voice goes up above 71 decibels, I get a little haptic feedback. And I know, oh, you're getting excited. Right? If I talk fast, there's an ambient noise sensor that says, hey, you're talking faster. And it's amazing what a little feedback loop will do for yourself. Again, the footprint I leave behind should be probably a good one. Most people go through life just learning these things naturally. Because I'm 45 and we don't have any work, I have to accelerate the process. And then I spend a lot of time working with microbiomes and DNA. I'm working with a company called, I had my DNA tested by a company called Exogen. Exogen does something really unique. I wasn't planning on talking about it, but I'll mention it. It's a consumer service, so that you give them your blood twice a week, and they tell you how much damage is done to your DNA. So it's really nice. If you say, if I leave 2 lights off a week, does my DNA get more or less damaged? So it's kind of like biological feedback in real time through a subscription service, like a magazine. One of the most interesting things I did was I basically looked at the data of my life and said, if I wanted to continue to eat really unhealthy, could I still lose weight? And the answer is yes, right? I just had to eat unhealthy at the right time. Right? You can have bad food if your body's in a state where it's really metabolizing a lot, if you've gotten the right amount of sleep. The other thing I thought that was really profoundly interesting that I learned about myself was how super connected I was to everything. So that's me out freezing. That's Rocco, not on the couch, doing exercise because he's a good dog. Oh, good boy, Rocco. That's my house and all the settings inside my house. There's some devices in my house, my vehicle, and my mattress. But what I found was like little subtle changes in me or any of these things affected all of them. So it's a very profound awakening of, while I love being connected to every human that I have ever meet or will meet or won't meet or etc., I love the fact I'm also connected to everything else because you can see it. Wow, just change this a little bit and change that. Please silence all cell phones. Sorry, someone's cell phone was just going off. And I think it's important, there's a quote here, the machine is a tool, but it's not a neutral tool. We are deeply influenced by the machine while using it. So anything you use, right now most of your mattresses probably aren't measuring your sleep. But if you bought a mattress in the next 5 years that has that option, you become sensitive to like being kinder to the mattress, going to bed on time. It's like having your mother embedded in everything, right? And next to the toaster. But what is the future of death? So how do we deal with all of these connected systems? Well, I think the first thing that's really important to look at in these kind of best practice section as we end is we're heading toward a time where there's a larger dead population online than there is on Earth, right? And we've had this for some time, but when there's more digitally dead than there are digitally active, that becomes, and they or some sort of AI helps them understand and talk to each other. We don't have to worry about being invaded or aliens or robots or dead people getting together and making decisions on satellites. I just don't want to deal with that, right? I think it's going to be awkward and we're just going to have problems. I think it's important as a best practice that you start to become slowly aware. I don't expect you to go out and become me because that would be awkward for both of us and I already exist. But be aware that anytime you touch a system in your life, you're probably touching something that's recording you. And these things, as they start to link up, are going to be able to create accurate pictures of you. When thinking about an accurate picture of you, at least from this point forward, think about a minimum viable human. So what's the minimum viable person you want to be online or when you touch anything electronic? I met someone in the registration line. They said, yeah, we've unplugged from everything. And I said, Amish as a service isn't official yet. But I know there's a disruption in the marketplace for it, right? Because you can actually spend extra money to go to islands that don't have Wi-Fi. And I'm just like, isn't that Survivor? We have stuff like that. But if you're going to do that, you need to think about the things in your environment that you're collecting, the information that you yourself store digitally, algorithmically, how it all applies together, and then your quantified existence, your devices, applications, and health sensors. Like I said earlier, I call this existence as a platform. It's just something I kind of hacked together myself because I think it's important for people to look at what they look like. But this is also very important. When you're connected to everything, everything can seem connected. Confusing those things is dangerous. And we've had times in history where through media or politics or other reasons, we've gotten confused as a culture about, well, what's real and what's connected and what isn't connected. And I think it gets a little bit exponentially more difficult as we start to look at ourselves in such a profound way. I use really simple systems, these two, Zapier and IFT, to move data around. I use a lot of APIs, and I move them into really open systems. So when you're thinking about moving forward, or if you're a developer or you're just a home person, this is not complicated stuff. As you can tell, I'm not super bright. Let's be honest, I am pretty smart. But sorry, I'm being recorded. It's like wearing a lie detector. Right? I'm just shocked, oh, sorry, yeah. And This is a great example. Again, you can get this deck online. This is a great example of someone who took my system. There's actually Chris Dancy programs on GitHub, but basically this person actually kind of showed how they moved their stuff through different systems so they can get it into one single record. Back in the summer, I was invited out to NASA. I did some work with Google and a couple other companies while I was there. But I took about a terabyte of my personal data and dumped it into a sentiment analysis engine, and I was finally able to talk to myself, which is really interesting because you can query and ask yourself not simple questions, but really complex questions like, how are you feeling? I'm feeling fine. I was like, well, where did that come from, right? But it was just taking this massive amount of information that I collected about myself. There's some great stuff if you're into tech. There's an API Commons project that I'm really backing to really open up APIs for all organizations who focus on technology. This is really important that we open up these data sources. And then, like I said just last week, there's this company called Eterni.me, ETERNI.me. I signed up, this is basically Toaster version 1, but basically you sign up, you start to link everything up, and you can start to talk to yourself officially. There's some scary things happening. There's a company called the Human API Project, and they keep emailing me asking me to stop mentioning them. I'm sorry, I'm not going to. But basically, they allow you to connect all of your systems and some genetic information, all of your biological systems and from trackers, etc. But they don't really do anything back for you yet. I'm sure they might. They might make this nice and easy for me to understand something. But what's really amazing is they have a whole developer platform. So they encourage developers to come in and use their API based on all of my own information to create middleware. So basically, it's not really about the computing or the applications that we create anymore. It's about the information that we've created that we've then plugged into other systems, and then people build apps on those. Does that make sense? So it's different. They're using you as the platform. That's why I call it humanity as the platform for programming. I'm going to end with a couple just fun things that I think are just really interesting. There's a show in England called Black Mirror. Anybody heard of Black Mirror? It's an English television show. You don't count. You just flew here. It's like, anybody heard of the Queen? God, you live there. By the way, she's not on our money. So there's a show, Black Mirror. One of the shows is called Wish You Were Here. But basically, this young lady takes a service, like one of these services I'm describing, in the future, and her boyfriend who passes away, and she has a relationship with him, kind of like the movie Her, except it's actually a real person. But then she gets the option to upgrade and get a physical version of him back. And I'm not sure how good the sound quality is going to be, so I'll just let it play. It's very short. But I think this particular scene is so important for us to think about.
Well, I am young.
I mean, you look like him on a good day.
The photos we keep tend to be flattering. I guess I wasn't any different.
So she says to him, "You look well." And he says, well, the photos we keep of ourselves tend to be flattering. And I think that's profound because so much of what we tend to keep is flattering. Right? I save really big pay stubs. I save articles and clippings about me. And in a society so obsessed with image and identity and who you are and who you want to be and who you were and who people believe you to be, what you save might be doing you a disservice. So just think a little bit about that. I think ultimately genetics plus behavioral information, the types of stuff I collect, plus deep learning will create some version of immortality. I think RootsTech in 2025 will be a much different RootsTech. There'll be a lot of dead people at RootsTech talking about what it was like to be there, as this sort of these changes happened. There's never been a more exciting time to be alive or to be dead. And to be connected to so much and so many people. So I think in some ways you have to think of it as a really hopeful time. But like me, classically, I want to end on kind of a funny note. So this is one possible humorous tongue-in-cheek way of passing away.
Welcome to life. We regret to inform you that your previous existence ended on January the 14th, 2052, following a road traffic accident. However, your consciousness was successfully uploaded to the Life Network by your primary care provider. You may be experiencing some confusion. Please remain calm. Life contains... Your mental state is being temporarily adjusted in order to calm you. Please remain calm. Life contains over 30,000 unique activities, networking with millions of other digitized minds, and the ability to contact undigitized friends and family. Please accept these terms and conditions in order to continue life. Your attention is particularly drawn to Section 2, Usage Rules and Limitations, Section 9, Privacy, and Section 11, Restricted Mental Activities. Thank you. Please select a life plan. Tier 1 is our premium offering, allowing full uninterrupted simulation of your pre-terminal state. It includes unlimited modification of your body plan, accelerated learning and recall, and full personal backup facilities. Tier 2 is our advertiser-supported offering. It contains many of the features of Tier 1, but at a significantly reduced cost. Some areas of the environment, such as the sky, may be replaced with targeted advertising, and your personal brand preferences may be altered to align with those of our sponsors. Tier 3 is our value offering. Thanks to our commercial partners, your experience at this tier is unlimited. However, some activities, sensors, and visual rendering options may be subject to a fair use policy. More complicated mental processes, including subconscious thought, creativity, and self-awareness, may be rate limited or disabled at times of significant server load. Thank you. Your stored mind contains one or more patterns that contravene the Prevention of Crime and Terrorism Act of 2050. Please stand by while we adjust these patterns. Your stored mind contains sections from 124,564 copyrighted works. In order to continue remembering these copyrighted works, a licensing fee of $18,000 per month is required. Would you like to continue remembering these works? Thank you. Please stand by. Welcome to life. Do you wish to continue?
George Carlin said, when asked about death and being plugged in or carved in a phone, he said, "Leave my plug alone." I'm not sure that many of us actually have that option, and I just want you to be really kind to that. I'd like to thank RootsTech, who invited me here to speak. They took me on a tour of Temple Square and treated me with so much kindness and respect last night. It really made me feel so welcome. I'd like to thank all of you for spending an hour with me. It can be difficult sitting still for this long. Trust me, I have sensors to prove it. The company that I work for allows me to do things like this. I still don't know why, but they do, and it's very kind of them to allow me to do this. Shutterstock is a company that gives me really cool photographs. But finally, I'd like to thank Neanderthal Man, because when he was presented with too much information, he was given tools and he was given options. He didn't say, "Oh my gosh, there's too much going on, I give up." He kept going, and that's up to us to keep going. Thank you.